Stephanie, and welcome back to the Lit Review. Today we're going to do my February wrap-up where I talk you through the books I got to read in February. This was a nice reading month for me considering that it was a short month. I'm very impressed, and it's one of the first times in recent memory that I have actually finished my Litland and didn't have to have rollovers. So it's a big win. If you've never done a wrap up with me before, how I like to do them these days, I'll be starting with my high bar for the month or my low bar with the month, and then we'll work our way up to the other end of things, up or down, I guess, depending. I think this time around I'm going to start with my low bar. I want to get like my rant out of the way this month, and then we'll work our way up to good news because I had a lot of great books this month. So I spend the most amount of time talking about my low bar or my high bar, and then I give like 1 to 2 sentence summaries of every other book. You'll also see like a little infographic up here that will have things like my star rating, any trigger warnings or tropes that I think you should know about. These are not exclusive lists. These are just the ones that are top of mind and that I can fit on the infographic. So always check Goodreads, or more specifically Storygraph, for trigger warning or content warnings to find out if a book may or may not be for you. So I think I read 8 books this month in February, which is huge. That's a really good February for me. And I read a lot of things that I really liked. So it's going to be more on the positive side this month, which is fantastic. But let's start with our low bar. The low bar this month, my least favorite read in February, is one that I don't own and I will not be purchasing. I checked it out from Kindle Unlimited, and that is Lourdes and the Mafia by Alira Anaya series. So this is a companion novel. You don't have to have read the other book. It's technically billed as a standalone on Kindle Unlimited. You get to meet Lourdes in the first time in Queenie and the Krakens, and she's a really dynamic supporting character, and so I was really excited to get her own book. What I think made this my low bar is how disappointing I found Lourdes' own standalone when I was really excited for her story. All that to say, I think my disappointment kind of culminated in me giving this such a low rating. I was kind of on the fence about just bumping it to 3 because I really like, and still really like, Lourdes as a character. But I struggled with this one. And I think it had a lot to do with the writing and the pacing and the character development on this. And yeah, it's a Kindle Unlimited romance, but there's such amazing stuff on that platform, and there's some really cool writing happening and world building happening in the other portion, like the other companion novel in the series. So this just kind of felt bad when it didn't land right, and that's what made it my low bar this month. At its baseline, Lourdes and the Mafia, as well as Queenie and the Krakens, is a kind of paranormal motorcycle club romance, and is also a why choose romance, where the heroine does not have to choose between her many male options. But they're also, what I really like about this series is that they center women of color, and there are like the heroes are diverse as well. So like that's one of the things that I really loved, and I really liked Queenie, and I really liked Lourdes in Queenie's story, and I still like her in her own story. But good gravy, like I ended up actually writing a Goodreads review about this because I was so frustrated when I finished reading it, and that almost never happens. I'm actually a pretty lackadaisical review writer on my Goodreads, so I just had to get my thoughts out. So you can read like my probably more articulate thoughts there. But the quick version of this is really just that I thought the pacing felt super off. When I got to the end of this and it let me know that this book was over 400 pages, my jaw hit the floor. I was like, no wonder I struggled, feeling like there was stuff happening. Like the plot felt like the pace of the plot was so stretched thin. Like the plot itself could have been really interesting, but there was just like these achingly long spaces between progress in the plot. And then when you did get progress, it felt really smushed together. And it's not even like it felt like the big breaks were because of the explicit scenes, because there were great explicit content. It's part of the things I really liked about this, but I don't think that got in the way of the plot, which is maybe a potential concern for some books in this genre, but like it wasn't here. So it just felt like everything was really either going too slow, like pulled taffy, or just like too fast and you couldn't keep up with it. And that was like a bit of whiplash for me as a reader. Like I found myself multiple times walking away from this book just walking away from it, putting it down and not caring about picking it back up again because I just wasn't excited. And then I would get into it and return to it and be like, oh yeah, I kind of like these characters. Like I like all of them individually. I think it's a really cool world building. But then I would just go through like one of those slow points again and I'd be like, okay, I got other stuff to read. It didn't connect right with me and that broke my heart because I actually really care about Lourdes as a character. So I think this one is less of a low bar because it did something like egregiously wrong, but I'm giving it such a low rating because it was just deeply disappointing and I struggled to connect with it and almost DNF'd it multiple times. So I think if you'd like to get into Alira Anaya series' writing, I think Queenie and the Krakens is the way to go for me personally because I had a much better time with that. I'm still interested in trying some of her other books, but I will probably give it a little bit before I go back to her as an author, and that's just kind of unfortunate. So thankfully, unlike January, February was a really good reading month for me. Like most of the stuff I read got a 3 or above. So we're just gonna work our way up to the good news, to the rave review of the month. And so from here on out, I will just be telling you title, author, and 1 to 2 sentences, but you'll still get the graphic to get you a little bit more about what's going on here. I read this visually explicit graphic novel, and I would call it an erotic graphic novel, so proceed with caution if that is not your thing. This is the first time I've ever read a visually explicit graphic novel to this extent. I'm talking too much already. So just putting that out there. But this is by C. Spike Trotman, E.A. Denick, and Kelly Fitzpatrick. Set in the 1960s, a fresh out of college art student trying to break into the comic world falls in with his hero and the real artist behind his hero's work. I gave it 3 stars. I had a good time. It shocked me in some ways, but it was a pleasant shock. I should have known what I was getting into. Let me know if you want me to talk more about this in a different video. I think it's a pretty unique thing in my collection. Moving right along, another short read that I got through in February is The Haunting of Tramcar 15 by P. Djeli Clark. I gave this 3.5 stars, and this is a novella in like a larger world that Djeli Clark has created, and I would definitely check out more based on what I read here. So this is set in like an alternate universe version of Cairo in the 19-teens, so 1912 specifically, and a paranormal agent is tasked with checking out the haunting of Tramcar 15 and discovering what type of being exactly is haunting the tram and why. I kid you not, from here on out, it's basically just going to be me trying to contain the excitement and maintain my small review status for all these books because I really, really loved most of what I read this month. But next on the list, as we work our way up to the high bar, is The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. I gave this 4 stars. You'll also notice on my little graphic, I try to give spice ratings when relevant and tier ratings where relevant as well. This definitely made me tear up. 2 immigrant teens with vastly different levels of privilege and world experience collide and fall very quickly in like and potentially love on the day that one of them is about to be deported. Oh shit, I actually did that in kind of a nice way. I have a lot more thoughts on this, but there is a video coming about this, so check that out more in the coming weeks. Then we get into the books that were almost, but not quite 5 stars, but we love them anyway. So first among those is 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This I gave 4.5 stars. Oh, it's just so much better than the TV series already. I immediately ordered the second book. How to describe. Set in Bardugo's Grishaverse, you don't have to have read the original trilogy to appreciate this diverse heist caper that tackles difficult subject matter, but is mostly action adventure along the way. Another 4.5 star. We have Indigo by Miss Beverly Jenkins. I've only read a few Beverly Jenkins works over the years, but this is my favorite of the ones that I've read from her. This is as much about the 2 main characters falling in love together as it is like learning to love and honor themselves, and I love those kind of stories. Also, if you love historicals with a lot of cool research in them, you're gonna love Beverly Jenkins's writing. Okay, and then the last book on the list before we hit our high bar was just shy of a 5 star. My favorite beautiful book, Radiance by Grace Draven. Yes, I have to show you how pretty it is again. I can't not. The only thing that kept this from being a 5-star rating for me is that I wanted more. I feel like there was room for more story and character developed by just a smidge, and I felt that lack a little bit, especially towards the end. But this is the first book in a duology about a mortal human who is in an arranged marriage with the Kai, who's like this kind of fae-esque being within the realm. And while they are not immediately attracted to one another, a friendship blossoms quickly, and you get to watch their love story develop over time. It's so good. I can't wait to read the second one. And now we're going to talk about my high bar, and I'm going to talk to you a lot about this one because it was truly the best thing I read this month. And that's saying something because I had a lot of books that really made my heart swell this month. But my favorite book of the month was a 5-star read that I didn't see coming, and that is How Moon Fuentes Fell in Love with the Universe by Raquel Vasquez Gillian. So this was actually a rollover for me. I needed to read this in January and had to roll it over into my TBR in February. And I'm so glad that I gave it the time and energy that it deserved. This was a 5-star read for me. It is one of those rare books that I desperately, desperately wish I had as a teenager, even though I don't think this book would have hit the same when I was an actual factual teenager, because Raquel Vasquez Gillian really dives into the pain, pleasure, but also like the issues of living your life so much online as a teenager in the modern era, specifically through an app that is basically Instagram, but they call it Photogram in this. So Moon Fuentes is a twin sister, and her twin sister Star is an influencer, and she's like the photographer behind the scenes. She has her own secret Photogram account, but she never tells anybody about it because she doesn't just want to be like dismissed. I will not be able to fit all the trigger warnings with this book in here, but they are worth a look. Child abuse, because Moon and Star's mother is, you learn throughout the course of the novel, like unwell. And that's a potential spoiler, but I really want to put that out there because the way that Moon sees the world and her role in that world is deeply shaped by the harm she received from her parental figure. And I think that's part of what made this story so deeply moving, even if I didn't have her exact lived experience. Like there's something healing about reading about somebody processing the trauma of how they grew up, because it just helps. I don't know how it works for you all, but it really just helped me stitch some pieces back together from my own childhood. But it was also deeply funny, and there's a really lovely, grumpy, sunshine, enemies to lovers romance in here, which is actually like the main plot is this romance. So Moon, in supporting her sister Star, has to go on this like charity tour that Photogram hosts every year. And her sister Star significantly is also like a purity culture influencer, which I thought was like such a good choice for Vasquez Gillian, because Moon has just decided to be like, no, I've had sex. I like sex. There's nothing wrong with sex. But she also gets a lot of flack from that from her sister and her mother. And so she is forced to accompany Star because of Star being a purity culture influencer. And so she ends up as a merch girl on this charity tour with the founder of Photogram's younger brother, who has like his own baggage that he's dealing with, being the younger brother of a celebrity figure. He also has a physical disability from an accident that he was in. So he has a lot of like understandable feelings about how people treat him based on how he looks. Also a fantastic thread of magical realism to this that I was not expecting, and I won't talk about it much more. It's such a minor thread that goes throughout the entire book, but it was really beautifully written. Like Vasquez Gillian's writing is poetic. I believe she is a poet first and then like transitioned into young adult writing, and you can feel that. Sometimes that can be kind of off-putting for people. As an author, she never sacrificed like the poetic way that she writes things at the hands of making like real grounded teen characters. I just think this is probably one of the best written teen stories in the contemporary space. And it blew me away. It really blew me away. There's a reason, even though I hate it when people do awards on the cover like this, there's a reason this thing won an award. The way I immediately bought Vasquez Gillian's other published work, which is Cia Martinez and the Moonlight Beginning of Everything. Like, that instantly got added to my cart after I finished reading this because I want more of this woman's writing in my life. This year has really been a year of loving YA for me, and I'm glad to see that return in my life because books like this make me really love the genre or fall back in love with the genre because there was just so much good here. There is just like a little bit of spice on the page here, which is worth mentioning for a young adult novel. But I think it fit within the scope of the novel's goals and who Moon was as a character. It didn't feel exploitative. It felt very much in character, and because of the poetic nature of Vasquez Gillian's writing, like you are aware of what is happening on page. It is an on-page scene, but it's not explicit in the way or I should say it's not as explicit as like a traditional published romance novel. So I really love that aspect because I think you're fooling yourself if you think that teenagers or some teenagers aren't having sex. That's my 2 cents there, but obviously, you know, proceed with that how you would like to. Highly recommend this book though. Like it really, really just did some cool things to my brain and I cried and it was good. I had a good time. This is my high bar for February. So those are all the books that I read in February, and I really loved almost everything that I read. And even my low bar wasn't that intense. Like, I wasn't angry at it. I was just, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. But I had a good time. I had a good time in February, and I'm really hoping that carries through into March. If you have read any of these books, please let me know in the comments down below what you thought of them. It's okay if we disagree. I'm just curious if any of you have read any of these books, especially Moon Fuentes. So let me know in the comments below. But thank you for spending time with me. I hope you have a fantastic reading day or night, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Hold on, girl, now wait just a minute. I've got something to say, you should hear it. Oh, I'm happy to make time for your feelings, but you have to admit I already do. Let's just break it down.